Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, number 2 would be Insidious The Red Door, number 3 would be Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, number 4 would be Sound of Freedom, and number 5 would be Elemental. And I only got 2 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend because there was maybe a bit of a kerfuffle that happened, and nobody else got it right in the comments in the last video. I already checked. One of you maybe did if you predicted it like 6 days ago, but like I keep saying, you know, don't comment it like when I know that you can check like what new stats are telling you, you know what I mean? Like, Friday is the last chance, you know? And the comment, as soon as I go in the comment section, it says 2 days. It's like, I'm not gonna do it. Sorry, I don't know why I have to keep saying that. Seems pretty obvious, but I don't know. Anyways, let's go over what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Now, the thing about this movie is that this is another example of a Hollywood blockbuster that has a budget that is incredibly big. And, you know, I feel like unless this is like the most, you know, record-shattering opening, a lot of people will have eyes on it and ready to declare it because of what we just saw with Dial of Destiny and I think Quantumania earlier as well, like, oh, it's a big flop. And I don't know if that's completely the case. Obviously, like a lot of these blockbusters, we're going to have to see how it does, especially with the competition, but then the kind of August drought that we kind of have, not that August won't have any movies, obviously, but it just seems like, you know, we'll see how it all kind of plays out, you know what I mean? Because anything could hold over, anything could happen, especially with positive word of mouth, and Dead Reckoning has some incredible word of mouth. Anyways, though, for the 3-day opening weekend, it had $56 million made. Now, since this movie opened up on a Wednesday, that adds to a domestic total, so a total 5-day opening of $80 million, which some people have said as far as like 5-day opening Mission Impossible movies, this sets a pretty, you know, this is a pretty high bar. This is pretty damn good. I think maybe the best in the franchise. And as far as the opening weekend goes, it's only the third highest opening weekend, 5 million behind Fallout and 1 million behind Mission Impossible 2. So I guess for the 3-day, it's pretty normal for a Mission Impossible movie to kind of open around here. If you look at the other ones too, you know, they don't really stray too far away from this kind of number. So it's doing exactly how it usually would do. You know what I mean? And as far as the other Mission Impossible movies, it now needs to outgross. It needs 72 million to outgross Mission Impossible 3. Worldwide, though, I think this is where I think you look at the domestic numbers and you might think like, oh, with a budget of $290 million, you know, ooh, is this good? Maybe if you opened at 100 million, will this be able to compete with Top Gun Maverick? And no, you know what I mean? Like, even if it is Tom Cruise, you know, Top Gun Maverick was a legacy sequel that, you know, a sequel to a movie that had like a specific and special kind of nostalgia surrounding it, and the word of mouth it wasn't just good, it was incredible. People love Top Gun Maverick. Everyone, a lot of people from all corners of the world loved Top Gun Maverick and couldn't stop talking about it, you know what I mean? And Mission Impossible, though it may set up some new standards because, you know, fans of Tom Cruise are already going to go see it anyways, and fans of the series, and and also because of Top Gun Maverick, like, oh yeah, I'll go see anything with Tom Cruise these days. So it may have had maybe a little bit more of a bump, but it will never have what Top Gun Maverick did because that came out at such a specific time, especially for, you know, the industry at that point in 2022 last year. So this was never going to open or have the same kind of, you know, box office reaction that Top Gun did. So I don't really, I think to compare it is a little unfair. I think it's doing pretty solid, especially when you look at the worldwide opening, which is at a total of 235 million. Now, no, it is not over the initial production budget of 290 million. And as we obviously know, it now needs to double that to be considered a success. So it's opened a little lower than that. But the fact that, you know, The Flash, you know, costing maybe more than its 220 million price tag, and Indiana Jones costing 300 million, and both of those, their worldwide openings were like 140 million, 130, something around those numbers. This one opening over 200 million and seeing the difference, like, okay, you see the domestic 5-day opening is 80 million. The domestic 5-day opening for worldwide, 235 million. That's, in case you couldn't tell, the worldwide territories are, you know, adding more to that than the overall domestic numbers. So I think this movie is going to do incredibly well. I think also it may slump a little bit because of Barbie and Oppenheimer. I maybe Haunted Mansion. I really don't know how that one's going to do, but I really genuinely think because of the positive word of mouth surrounding this, because this is another one that's been getting some pretty incredible buzz. You know, I think that we may see this one really have some strong legs and go on to double that budget and be considered a success. So, I mean, I hope that's my hope, because I really, really loved this movie. But we will have to wait and see. You know, next weekend we'll kind of, I think, get a good vibe of like, okay, is it holding up well against Barbie and Oppenheimer, or is it like really dropping? What does that say for the next weekend? We won't know for sure how it's going to do. Obviously, that time will tell with that one, but it'll just be interesting to see how it does. I think right now it might be in a solid spot. We'll just have to wait and see. Worldwide, it still needs $164 million to outgross Mission Impossible 3. So right now, MI3 is the least grossing one that this one needs to outgross, but I think it's pretty positive that it will do that at some point, probably next weekend, and if not, the weekend after. You know, it's not going to take forever, like a certain movie that we'll get to in a second. But first, we need to talk about number 2, which is Sound of Freedom. If you remember, this is the movie that kind of came out of nowhere on me last weekend, really threw my predictions off, and a lot of people's predictions off. It was opening up at number 4. And there was like an opening of like in the 16 million, and it opened up on July 4th, so it was a little higher. This movie bumped up to have a second weekend of $27 million, which now adds to a domestic total of $85 million. And of course, with the budget being 14.5, yeah, they've doubled, they've tripled, probably quadrupled if I'm thinking of the math correctly in my head. At a certain point, the numbers get hard to do in your head, so hopefully I'm right with that. But yeah, it's already, you know, a success. Or is it? I don't want to talk too much about this movie because I know there's controversy surrounding it, and you know, I haven't seen it for a specific reason. You know what I mean? I didn't know it existed, and then when I did, I was like, yeah, I don't need to see this. You know what I mean? And hey, you may like this movie, you may hate this movie. You know, have your opinion, whatever. But I do think there's at least an interesting conversation to be had as far as like, you do know that like there's like a thing with this movie where people who see it, they can pay for a ticket for somebody else, and sometimes with these movies that I know someone was like in the comments last weekend like, it's not a faith-based movie, like, or it's like they commented that thinking that I was going to say some shit about that. It's like, I never did. I didn't talk about it in detail for that specific reason, to try to avoid that. But okay, you know what I mean? But, you know, sometimes with those kind of movies, you know, that crowd can buy out a theater, you know what I mean? And you know, really bring the numbers up, you know what I mean? So you already have that kind of involved with it. And, you know, the fact that it didn't really get marketed that much, but it had this solid opening and people were talking about it like, hey, what's this? It came out of nowhere. People may be interested the second weekend around, so that can explain it as well. But there is a program where people, and apparently in the movie's post-credits or whatever, at the very end of the movie, something, Jim Caviezel appears out of character and is like, what's up, everybody? Click the link, or that probably wouldn't happen in the theater, or like, scan this QR code, or, you know, go to this website and you can buy a ticket for somebody else. Spread the word, you know, buy a ticket for someone, get them to go see this. And yeah, they buy the ticket and more money gets added to the box office because of that. But there isn't really a record or, you know, show of like, how many people are actually seeing the movie, you know what I mean? Like, people who actually redeeming those free tickets. Dan Murrell went over it on his box office video for last week and kind of breaking it all down. And it's kind of like, is this movie's success really as earned as everyone's trying to, you know, proclaim it to be? You know what I mean? Not everybody, but I just find that really interesting. You know, you see people that are like in the theaters like, man, the showing said it was sold out, but I'm the only one here. It's like, well, you know, you know, it just makes you think. By the way, if you think, not to rag on this even more, but if you think there's a conspiracy, like, oh man, the AC is fucking weird in this theater, you know what I mean? And it's conveniently for this movie. Either you don't go to see movies that often and aren't, you know, aware that there's just a lot of theaters in general that have just some shitty qualities about them, you know what I mean? Like, the theaters that I like going to near my house, or just the theaters near my house in general, you know, I have a preference over the ones, but I'm not saying that theater is perfect, you know what I mean? Like, there's problems, and you can find them anywhere. And, you know, and you know, who's to say that some of these people are even telling the fucking truth to begin with, you know? So That's the end of that. Never talking about this movie again. Let's move on to number 3, which is Insidious The Red Door, making $13 million, having a pretty bad 60% drop. That adds to a domestic total of $58 million, though. So with the budget of $16 million, it's already, doing pretty well. It has outgrossed Chapter 3 by $6 million, and it has outgrossed the first one by $4 million, and now needs $9 million until it outgrosses The Last Key. Worldwide, it took a big jump, at least for me, jumping up to $122 million. So now it's outgrossed Chapter 1 by $23 million, and it has outgrossed Chapter 3 by 2. It now needs $39 million until it outgrosses Insidious 2. So this movie, I domestically, it had a little bit of a drop in that weekend, but I feel like the worldwide numbers went up a little bit, and it's actually doing pretty damn good, all things considered. Like, it's still outpacing all the other Insidious movies, which is, good for a weekend that high last weekend. So yeah, good stuff all around for this Insidious movie that I didn't particularly care for overall, but it's just cool to see a horror movie. It's cool to see any movie do well. I mean, maybe some more than others, but it's cool to see that, and because as far as I know, this movie doesn't have like an ad at the very end of like the credits or something where Patrick Wilson comes up with Jason Blum arm in arm like, hey, spread the word, buy a bunch of fucking tickets. Will people see it with your money? I don't fucking know, but it doesn't matter. Give us your money. Let's move on to number 4, which is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, making $12 million, adding to a domestic total of $145 million. For James Mangold, it is outgrossed The Wolverine by $13 million. It now needs $81 million until it outgrosses Logan. And then for the Indiana Jones franchise, domestically, it needs 34 until it outgrosses Temple of Doom. Worldwide, it is sitting at $302 million. So they have finally crossed over the initial production budget of $300 million. They still have a long ways to go to double that and be considered a success, but even then, it's like, for a budget that big, you probably need a little bit more. So, not even, and it's probably not going to get there anyways. It's probably going to tap out maybe before $400 million. Who fucking knows? Worldwide, it needs $31 million until it outgrosses Temple of Doom. So slowly but surely, it'll outgross Temple of Doom. For James Mangold, it's outgrossed Night and Day by $44 million and now needs $312 million until it outgrosses Logan. So, there you go. Like, now for James Mangold, it only needs to outgross Logan, and then it's, his most successful movie. But will it? Probably not. Even domestically, obviously, getting to 81 million seems more likely than 312 million for domestic versus worldwide. But I don't know, this movie hasn't really gotten, like, it's gotten like some positive reception when it finally came out in theaters, but there was that bad early buzz from Cannes, and then there are people out there who maybe they didn't hate the movie, or maybe they didn't even think it was okay, but they were definitely like, like, I liked it, but and that but kind of wane people off from seeing it. I don't know. So I just don't see it really having that much more legs outside of this, especially with like, Barbie and Oppenheimer. And like I said, Mission Impossible, if that has a great holdover because of the word of mouth, and people are literally comparing aspects of Mission Impossible to Indiana Jones. So it's like, this new Indiana Jones. So it's like, yeah, and people are preferring Mission Impossible. Let's move on to number 5, though, which is Elemental, which, did something pretty surprising we'll talk about in a second, but it made $8 million, adding to a domestic total of $125 million. So it's outgrossed Lightyear by $7 million and The Good Dinosaur by $2 million, and now needs $27 million until it outgrosses Cars 3. Worldwide, it is sitting at $311 million. So it seems like this movie worldwide is actually bumped up a little bit, and it's still... Let me just, it's still not a success. They still need to double that $200 million budget in order to be considered that. And, with these Disney movies where the budgets are just fucking massive, usually it's like, hey, $500 million, that's when you can consider it a success. But it's like, it's lasted a lot longer than I thought it would when it debuted, so there's that at least. It still needs $22 million until it outgrosses The Good Dinosaur. But the thing is, it will outgross The Good Dinosaur, which for a lot of people is pretty good. So let's move on to number 6, which is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, making $6 million, adding to a domestic total of $368 million. It still needs $5 million until it outgrosses Spider-Man 2, and then worldwide it is sitting at $663 million, and it needs $35 million until it outgrosses The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So still behind the Spider-Man 2s, like it was last weekend, but, this movie is, made 6 times its $100 million budget, and it's damn near close to making 7 times that. So I think they're doing pretty well, and I don't really have much else to add to this. So let's move on to something that I feel like I can talk a little bit more about, interestingly, which is Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. It made $3.4 million, adding to a domestic total of $152 million. It is still behind Age of Extinction by $93 million. It's looking like it's probably not going to get there, even with any other like holdover stuff. It's like it can't make that much. Worldwide, though, it had like a slight little little bump up, bumping up to $420 million. So now it's $20 million over the doubling point of its initial $200 million production budget. It still needs $45 million until it outgrosses Bumblebee, though, so it's looking a little grim there. However, I did notice on IMDb, and maybe this is bullshit, and maybe it won't affect the box office worldwide total that much, especially since this movie in some territories, like in the US, it's on digital now, so that's affecting the box office, I'm sure, as well. But worldwide, it still needs to open in Japan, and it's like August 4th was the date that I read on IMDb, so I'm thinking like, okay, maybe one final push in one more place can maybe bump it up a little bit more. I think I've always maintained, like, it's good that it outgrossed Last Night and Bumblebee domestically, but if it outgrosses at least Bumblebee domestically and worldwide, that will say a little bit more. And, they still need to, come back from a lot of bad faith from the Transformers movies from before. So I don't know, I don't know what their plans are as far as like, because they haven't announced like we're officially moving forward with more. There was just, we're in talks to do it, like kind of before the movie came out. So I don't know. I would hope for more because I had fun with this, but like I keep saying, like I get why people didn't love this thing, but I wish it was just making more. Let's move on to number 8, which is No Hard Feelings, making $3.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $46 million. For the director, it is still $39 million behind Good Boys, and worldwide it is sitting at $77 million, so $34 million behind Good Boys. But I think maybe a little bit more importantly, it's $13 million away from doubling its $45 million budget. So is there a chance that this comedy film can have legs similar to like what maybe, fucking Mission Impossible can have in the next couple weeks, or is it already down for the count? And I'm thinking it probably is, which is, I'm sure a bummer, but hey, it had a pretty solid run for one of these movies. It's just the budget. If the budget was like just exactly like 30 million or 35, we would say like it's at least doubled the budget here. You know what I mean? But it's that dreaded 45. And unfortunately, even though it had like a great like internet kind of reaction, like Twitter was like, oh yeah, Jennifer Lawrence, yeah, this is the good shit in movies. Yet still, that kind of reaction is still not enough to get everybody on board with this, unfortunately. Or at least enough people to push it over the 45 million doubling point. So it's doing better than number 9, which is Joyride, dropping fast, very, very, very shameful, making $2.5 million, adding to a domestic total of $10 million. I still don't know what the budget of this thing is, and there's not really a big enough gap in the worldwide total to really add that kind of number here. So it's just, it's a big shame because like I said last weekend, this is a really good movie. It had a lot of heart, and I was really hoping that maybe, just maybe, it could just, and it didn't open in the top 5, but I was hoping maybe it could just stick around at that number 6 spot still, just barely drop. But here we are, it's probably going to drop out of the top 10 next weekend because Barbie and Oppenheimer, and even Cobweb, I don't think that's going to get in the top 5, but Cobweb is something that will probably lurk in the bottom 5 if it would, you know what I mean? Oh well, finally closing out the video, number 10, The Little Mermaid, making $2.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $293 million. That is $41 million away from Alice in Wonderland, and then worldwide it is sitting at $546 million, which is $212 million away from Maleficent. So there you go. This movie is ending on a note. It's not necessarily high. Is it a low? I don't even know because it doubled its budget, but is that enough? It usually isn't. People are expecting a little bit more. It definitely, I will give this movie this, it definitely lasted a little bit longer than, The Flash or Ruby Gillman. That's gone. Did you notice that? Or Joyride is seemingly doing. So, I mean, good on them, but man, I'm sure Disney must be fucking disappointed. I mean, I'm sure they're disappointed in a lot of shit right now, but you could say it's also partly their fault for the shit that they're in, not paying your writers fairly, trying to replace actors with AI and then saying like, oh, it's really disruptive and I don't get why they're trying to fuck us over like this, blah, blah, blah. It's like, hey, asshole, you're literally making enough to pay all these people fairly and you're still fucking rich. I'm talking about Bob Iger specifically, but there's a lot of people who could just, if they could just afford to give up like half of their like billions of dollars, so they'd still be like, okay, if you take like half from $1 billion, it's still $500 million, and that's still wealthy as fuck. They could take that other $500 million and just funnel it into like, let's pay the writers fairly. Let's make sure actors can still get proper residuals in this, changing streaming landscape. So, people can actually like make a career out of this and not have to like fucking be scared. Like, even though they may have a recurring role in a show, but it's like, I'm still scared to fucking like, am I going to stay as an actor or do I have to keep working a second job? You know what I mean? It's like, God damn. Pay the fucking writers, pay the fucking actors, Jesus Christ. Get your head out of your ass, Bob Iger. And other people, obviously, but he's the one with that fucking quote. And then there's the anonymous ones that Hellboy respond to, Ron Perlman, like, I'm gonna burn your fucking house down. Anyways, now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, considering the meme kind of hype around this, I can't see how Barbie doesn't end up number 1 at the box office. Number 2, just based off of early tracking and its ties with Barbie opening up on the same day, I think Oppenheimer really does have a chance to be here at number 2. Number 3, I think will be Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Like I said, it'll be interesting to see how much it holds over, if it completely syncs with these two out, or if they can kind of, equally exist in a way that makes sense. Number 4, I think will be Sound of Freedom. And then number 5, Insidious The Red Door. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.